We were talking just a moment ago about how enriching it has been to have just one thing as a tool, to also have something in common to read between the undergraduates that are in the first semester at Cal, from Latino background, and then our early students. So, Robert, could you put us side by side, perhaps? I would like to introduce Dr. Rick Hanson formally. And we have been following his work for a long time. I mean, this course was first created in 2013. And at that first time, we were using Buddha's Brain a lot, which was published in 2011, and is just a beautiful book on not only the neuroscience of the brain, but also how it relates to our experiences in our daily life, and how can we cultivate that Buddha nature that we all have. And so bringing together ancient wisdom and neuroscience. And then came Just One Thing. Well, also has been part of this course informally, but now more formally, since Millie suggested we should all have it. And then came, let's see, Hardwiring Happiness, which is what people were saying, how much they found it so useful to have to hold a little bit longer to the happy experiences, which often, like you have said so clearly, we are like Teflon for the good and like Velcro for the bad, and how we keep going to the bad, trying to solve whatever could be there. And then Resilient, which is one of my favorites, as you can see. We have also been using it in this course, parts of it. And this was even, Resilient was even before the pandemic. I think it was 2018. And then came Neurodharma, which is also a really beautiful book with 7 practices, and from Buddhism and from psychology also, and how we can keep learning from our experiences to cultivate all this potential that we have, all these inner resources that often lay dormant or covered by other experiences. And so Rick is, well, I don't know, Rick is a miracle. I don't know how he does everything that he does. He's a senior from the Greater Good Science Center, and he's also part of the Polyvagal Institute, and he gives all kinds of courses and meditation on Wednesdays, and the Living Good Well podcast with his son Forrest. I'm, not only at your generosity, Rick, but how do you make time for all this? How do you do it? Can you tell us a little bit of your daily practice?
Well, thank you for the very kind introduction, and hello, everyone in this class, and greetings. I hope this is helpful to you. Well, you ask a great question at 2 levels. The practical level, I kind of laugh and I think about the phrase from some of the Star Trek TV shows, resistance is futile, the Borg, and there's something in my mind that tells me that friction is futile. The rope goes through our hands in life, and it's when we squeeze it that it creates friction and it hurts. So if we stop resisting the tasks that we need to do or the urgency of the moment and simply surrender to doing what is the most important thing to do right now, whatever that is, then suddenly your life becomes much simpler. So that's been really helpful to me. And it has reduced the stress that comes from unforeseen circumstances. We're not resisting it as it is, even while oftentimes we're trying to help it become better. With that calming in the body and easing in the heart, which is also a basis for dreaming big dreams and pursuing your big goals while still feeling content meanwhile, and paying attention to that. And this little practice, so we are already in the deep end of the pool. I hope it's okay. This little practice releasing friction with the way it is in the present and feeling an enoughness already, both of them are swim against the stream of our evolved biology, which is evolved to fight or run from or freeze in the face of the way it is right now.
So maybe we can talk about, in some of your books, you talk about for example, the 7 practices, the Hardwiring Happiness, but then at one point you decided to write just one thing, which instead of the concepts, it's more like a collection of practices, 52 practices, one for every week of the year, I guess. Uh, how was your, what's the process between these two?
That's great.
And maybe that can be helpful for people too, as they are trying to decide, where to, there are so many resources, how to use them.
Yeah. Well, just like you say, you can go on Amazon, you can walk through a bookstore, and there are 1,000 sources of advice. Go on YouTube, 100 million sources of advice immediately. I think it's really helpful to focus on 1 or 2 or 3 really clear things that you connect with emotionally and speak to your heart, whatever they are. Right. And that's the idea of just one thing. And so what I offered in that particular book was a simple practice, stated simply, things like get on your own side, have compassion for yourself, see clearly, just simple, enjoy life. In my new book, which is coming out about relationships, it's structured much the same way. That one comes out in January, except it's about relationships. So it includes things like admit fault and move on. That's good. Listen, that's good. So it's really helpful in this complicated, fast-paced world to have one thing today. What's one thing that you're trying to remember from time to time? Is your North Star today? But it's simple, it's real, you can do it. What's one thing? So that's what that book's about. And there are 52 of them, and they're all short. I got a compliment actually in a radio interview from a funny guy. He said, Dr. Hanson, I just got to admit it, this is a great bathroom book. I started laughing. I was like, yeah, that's great. 2 3-page chapters, you can digest it. And that's good. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, that's what we have been discussing almost from the beginning of the course. I mean, first we were thinking about learning to learn, which is something I was investigating in 2007. And I brought it to education in the sense of we often teach as if it was not related to ourselves, and how, when the brain and the heart, like you're saying, when the brain and the heart are together, we then really learn with more experiential. And I think that's what's also so beautiful about the way you present a lot of these understandings that you often related to your own processes, but also you related to the people, to the daily life. So it's almost like having a psychologist by the side and a friend and a very kind person helping with the specific seeds of wisdom. So yeah, and I wanted to maybe compare the two, make great relationships. I send the table of contents to the students, like you had mentioned. And then just one thing. Would you say that maybe just one thing is more working with oneself, and that make great relationships is although the two are always connected, of course, but could you tell us a little bit about how do you see these two as maybe complementary of each other? Or
thank you. Yeah, very perceptive and correct. So the first book, Just One Thing, is about internal practice. And internal practice is incredibly important. Even just 5 minutes a day. 10 seconds here, 1 minute there, 2 minutes before you go to bed. If you do just 5 minutes a day, you're in the 95th percentile or higher of personal practice on the whole planet, probably. It's a lot, 5 minutes, and then maybe more. So that's internal practice. And then making great relationships, it is internal and external practice focused on relationships. Focused on relationships. I think one of the chapters is use anger, don't let it use you, for
Right,
example.
right, right.
And so that's the difference. And also, I'm very motivated by the state of the world today.
Exactly.
We are in deep trouble as a tribe, all 8 billion of us in the human tribe across all kinds of boundaries. And we need to really move quickly to get a grip as all of us, and frankly, to put it in a certain kind of problematic way, just like in the 97% of the time our species walked the earth as hunter-gatherers, in hunter-gatherer bands, unique among all the primate species, we organized our life on the basis of what's called caring and sharing, compassion and justice. And then other primate species, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, so forth, um, that they organize their life on the basis of alphas dominating betas. It's called holding and controlling, including reproductive control in other primate species. That's the basis for their social life. Our hunter gatherer ancestors did indeed get aggressive and violent, even with other bands. But inside the band, they formed a unique strategy of caring and sharing, compassion and justice. And since agriculture appeared, unfortunately, or in blessing and a curse, generated surpluses that enabled larger population groups, which then enabled growing concentrations of wealth and power that took on a life of their own. And it's been Game of Thrones in lots of ways ever since for many, many, many people. So to address that, we need to come together, much as our ancestors did, in which, in a sense, the betas around the world come together to regulate the excesses of the alphas of wealth and power. And that's so fundamental. And I wanted to write about that, at least at the grassroots level, and then building from there.
Yeah, how can we learn to live together as
Yeah,
people, as nations, as communities? Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful,
completely true.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's
There,
time urgent. How do we come together to stop dumping 100 million tons a day of carbon dioxide into the air due to
right.
human activity? How do we stop? Um, how do we address the fact that each day roughly 10,000 children die of hunger around the world? How do we really come together to address that? How do we come together to make sure that every child, not just some boys, has access to a decent education through high school worldwide? How do we do that? How do we halt the rise of fascism and authoritarianism as we see? How do we come together to do this?
So, what is your answer? I mean, working on ourselves and working in groups, because that was also one of the
Mm,
questions we were looking at before you join us. It was
yeah,
like, okay, are we preaching to the choir? I mean,
yeah,
when we look at around and there is so much ecological destruction and political uncertainty, and so many things like you were also presenting just now. How um, how
mhm.
can we spread it more quickly? And I would love to hear your answer on that.
Yeah, I think that's the right question. And there are different answers. An answer that I think is hopeful and wise is to form a global coalition with millions of people and organizations using the internet and modern, technology to form a global coalition across divisions that thoroughly intends to place compassion and justice at the foundation of every society. So to come together at scale, just that alone will be helpful to be able to use websites and other means to look across and go, oh, there's so many other people and organizations that are engaged in good trouble, as John Lewis put it, bless his memory, who are fighting a good fight. And we can help each other, that alone, but also create a framework in this global coalition, which we have now established in this. People can look up globalcoalition.org.
Oh, it is
Global
existing.
Oh, it's happening. It is happening.
Okay,
It is.
okay. So that's
Oh,
also
it's
my
real. Oh,
question.
we're real. So globalcompassioncoalition.org. Go to the website. It's a beginning website, but you'll see what we're doing, and you can join. You can help. And so, and if you think about it, Amelia, you've been in this world. You've seen what I'm about to say, which is the forces of wealth and power are very competitive in the marketplace. But at the political level, they combine their money and their efforts to maintain their position that and a world that is good for some but not good for most, right? Loving, progressive, non pro-social organizations are the opposite. They're the opposite. I've seen it directly. They're very friendly with each other, but they almost never put their money together toward a common purpose that lasts more than a month or two. It's very rare. And that's why, to put it bluntly, the alphas bind together and divide and conquer the betas. That's been the age old story. And we need to change that. We need to bring our money and our voices together in common cause and sustain that effort over many, many years, decades even, because it will take decades to actually change the structural systemic sources of vast suffering. We should also work at the individual level. That's mainly what I've done as a therapist and a mindfulness teacher and a compassion teacher. It's really important to work at the individual level of compassion and decency and respect for justice. Great. Change one heart at a time. But that's been the effort for thousands of years. And meanwhile, it's been business as usual in history, including at the present time. So, in addition to fostering compassion and respect for justice at the individual level, we need to pool our resources at the societal level to change the incentives of wealth and power, so that they actually change over time, because they are currently incented to do what they do. The people, for example, who work in the fossil fuel industry, and I have a cousin who is a major, is a he's an oil man in North Dakota. He's a wonderful guy. He does not wake up in the morning and think, how can I ruin the world for the next 1,000 years, right? Or million. He doesn't think like that. But his incentives, his culture, his profits, the people who are his friends and allies, the political party he belongs to and identifies with, all of those send him down the highway in the direction of dumping 100 million tons a day of carbon dioxide into the air, along with many others. So we have to change their incentives. And it's naive to think that inspiring calls for action or, you know, waving signs in the street will actually produce the results that we need today. We need to make a better world happen, not with violence, not with hate, but with a very clear-eyed change of the incentives that maintain the status quo.
And it's beautiful to be able to work at different levels. For many people, it would be working with themselves and with their friends. And another question that was coming up was, how can I start talking to my mom about these changes, psychological changes? I truly believe, also from my practice in meditation and teaching, that when we change inside and when we pray together, if you want, or just hold the vision, changes also start happening. So I'm very glad that there is this coming together. And also I have been sending everywhere that beautiful video you created on Vote. Well, not you only,
yeah,
all
many others.
Many others. That was beautiful. I think this is also practical ways of having engaged spirituality, so that we don't think, oh, spirituality is just about sitting and closing your eyes. It's also about deeply engaged, and there is deeply engaged Buddhism and I have also understood that when we do this volunteering with the undergrads, with the other adults, there are different ways that we are working together to try to change the world. And also another question that was coming up just before you came was, how can I talk to my mom or my friends, people that don't seem to be interested in this kind of paying attention to the inner world and perhaps finding new ways to cultivate this neuroplasticity? And then I have another question for you, but and
Well,
then we're going to go to questions and answers also from the
oh,
group.
that would be great.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I mostly work at the personal level. I
Mhm.
have recently gotten interested in the political level, in part because I have seen in my lifetime in America that the personal level has of mindfulness and psychotherapy and spiritual wisdom has not produced political change.
Mhm.
The politics in America have gotten worse in the last 40 years. While the consciousness of many, people in America has become more open to things like psychotherapy and psychology and mindfulness and compassion and wisdom. So that said, I think it's really important to start where someone is with respect and with deep listening and to really listen first. Where does it hurt? Right? What's it like to be that person, whether it's your mother or your friend? What's it like to be you and to have the courage to show up for at least a few minutes in a row, if not 10 or 20, and just listen. And then at some point it seems appropriate often to ask a person, huh, what do you think might help? And most people, so that's a good question. And if they swerve away from that question, that tells you something. It tells you that they're not ready for it or they're not interested in it. And many people, frankly, are really they are invested in their troubles. They are invested in their pain because that's what they identify with, or that's what they think will get support from others, or maybe they're afraid to change their life in some way, whatever, but it's a fact. Let's suppose, though, they actually are interested in the question of what would make it better, or what do you wish would be the case? What do you wish would be true? And most people answer that question looking outside themselves. Okay, understandable. That's understandable. And so they say, well, it would be better if my neighbor did not play loud music,
Mhm.
or it would be better if I had a better doctor, or my body hurt less. They look outside themselves. There's a
Mhm.
place for that. So we think a little bit about that. And then it can be quite helpful to ask, well, yeah, that's all true. Let's try to find you a better doctor or better medicine, or what can we do with the neighbor? Meanwhile, what would help if you had more of it inside yourself? Inside yourself. What do you mean by that? Many people ask because they never think this way.
Mhm.
Okay, that's where we start. What do you mean by that? Well, for example, if inside yourself, what do you think? You had more of a sense of uh, thankfulness for the life that you've already had, even while you are dealing with this problem. Or if you had more of a feeling that other people care about you and are listening to you and support you, even if we cannot change external conditions. And often you cannot change external conditions or conditions in the physical body, but you can change how you relate to them. You can change how they impact you. So then you start very straightforward looking at things like, well, maybe if, it might help to have more of a sense of mindfulness that gives you some breathing room from your upsetting feelings. It's normal to feel sad or angry or scared, let's say, or hurt, but can you get some mindful space around that? Right there will lower suffering by 50% about just to get some breathing room. Oh, would it help you to feel some compassion for yourself? Whoa, that's a completely new idea for most people. They understand compassion for others, a warm, caring response to suffering, but they don't bring it to themselves. Oh, okay, that might be something to develop. Uh, Maybe it would help to have more sense of personal worth, that you deserve a doctor who freaking listens to you, you know, or you are worthy of your partner. Not, I mean, you are worthy of your partner doing his job at home, doing his fair share. You know, so then you're in a conversation of how to grow it. So that to me is how to get there, and then the how.
That's assuming that they understand the same language and they don't feel preached to, or
Oh,
it's
sure.
like
I don't assume it.
if
I find
they
that most people do not. They if you're sincere, you know, and you start with listening, and you respect their answer. Are they interested in what might help? And if they're not, they're not. And are they interested in what might help inside themselves? And if they're not, they're not. I
okay.
mean, to me, but
Good.
then it's really straightforward. And
Yeah.
usually they're perplexed, like, what do you mean? And
Right, right,
and then,
right, right, right.
you know, then you just, and again, not talking about fancy psychological
Mm,
terminology, real practical. What would help if it was more inside you?
right,
Yeah,
right.
and people vary in their openness, and many
Yes.
people are
Uh,
not very, you know, and that's just true, but so be it.
and in the moment too, there are so many different moments. I see here a question, and then I have another one for you.
Yeah.
Here it says, how do we distinguish and work towards change when being nice, not disturbing the status quo, is
Mhm.
the norm, versus being deliberate, calling out injustice, working towards social change?
Yeah. Um, I think so I've learned from people like so many people, Nelson Mandela, Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, so many people. Uh, and what I observe is first, they do not let hate poison their heart. Second, they connect with others in solidarity. It's really, you know, if only in their mind, they keep in mind that there are other people who are also caring about this. Third, they do what they can in their corner of the world. Maybe all they can do is just know who they're going to vote for.
Mhm.
Maybe they could also drive a friend to a place to vote. That's what they can do. Two votes. Okay, but that's what you can do. It takes many drops to build a mighty stream, a mighty river. Those three things right up there really stand out. And then last, I think it's really helpful to track the difference between talk and walk.
Mm.
What I mean is, there, if you look in at progressive circles, and there is a lot of talk and not that much walk. And you need talk to clarify walk, but a lot of self-congratulatory talk can replace walk. And so I think it's very helpful to really ask, is this actually making a concrete difference long term? Or is it just a gesture toward a better world that has no traction? And I'm very interested in what actually has traction, what actually has traction. And I think it's important to realize that we change the world sometimes one heart at a time, one mind at a time. There's a place for that, and it gradually builds, like the willingness to suddenly accept gay marriage in America. It's
Mhm.
been a long struggle, but all the little things that happen on television, like with a clearly gay character, was just normal and included. And then seeing eventually two men kiss on the screen, or two women, things like that, gradually, then there can be a sudden change. You know the saying, Amelia, from your meditation background, gradual cultivation, sudden awakening. There's a
Right.
place for that. On the other hand, you can just look at politics in America. And in the last 40 years, while liberals, really the center, was wringing its hands and saying, oh, let's be nice. Meanwhile, the hard right, the religious right, the racist right, the rich right, three came together, religious, racist, or rich, came together to form the Republican Party's core and drag the country in a terrible direction toward minority control, in which a minority are imposing the policies that the majority clearly 65% of the country completely opposes. So we need to really pay attention to talk that produces walk.
Yes, yes.
I
Okay.
see a thumb there from
Mm,
the fellow in the control booth. I like where you are, man. Alan, it's nice behind you. You know, I hope it's not too cool. You just have a t-shirt on.
He loves nature like you. You also love nature to have a break. Yeah. So yeah, there was one more question, and I want to open it so that different people can ask you different things. The other question was, with this cultivating positive neuroplasticity, how do we do it? Even in our group, even understanding that what are the practices and all that is often I don't know, somehow people sign for a course and then don't take the course. And so I see that you are moving more and more towards, okay, there is no excuse. I'm going to give it all to you in just 1 minute.
Or one breath.
Yeah, one breath. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then we go to questions.
You are naming the real problem. And there's a joke in psychotherapy world. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
Mhm.
And in the same way, we must want to change and we must take responsibility for that.
Mhm.
I understand we're busy. I understand we're distracted. Still, in our life, one breath at a time, we can slow down and take in the good that we're already experiencing. Like Amelia, I like you a lot, and I feel grateful for your appreciation and your respect and your support. You know, there's certain people in this life, when you're around them, you feel lifted up and enlarged. Other people, you feel suppressed and contracted. It's really important to look for the folks who lift you up and enlarge you. I feel that with you. I'm slowing down to let that sink in, one neuron at a time, slowly but surely. So then, as I go through life, I can have a growing treasure chest inside, or a growing, pile inside of experiences of feeling enlarged and lifted up and seen. It's as simple and intimate and important and powerful as this. And uh, we need to be deliberate about growing more of the good. There's a little bit of good that grows incidentally just from being in situations, thank goodness. But we really grow the good when we become inside ourselves, when we become deliberate about it. A
Yeah.
breath here, a minute there, 5 minutes of meditation before bed. That's really, really central.
Yeah, and knowing and trusting that is within us, that all those inner resources are there to be developed. I'm going to open the conversation to everyone. There was another question, and I hope maybe she will come with it, but let me just ask it, just in case a person is shy. She was
Yeah.
saying something about toxic positivity. That is a
Oh,
term
yeah.
that now hearing, and she gets confused about it and doesn't know what it means, and how does it relate to speaking wisely. I see that in making great relationships, the
Ah,
biggest section is about speaking wisely, which is one of
right.
the Buddhist principles, right?
Yeah.
So can you somehow connect both of them, and then we go to
Right.
other questions.
So, toxic positivity is something like you just get a diagnosis of a serious disease, or you just hear that something terrible has happened to someone you care about, maybe your cat, maybe your friend, maybe your mother, and you tell someone, and the person says to you, "Oh, look on the bright side."
Mm,
Or they say, "Well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger."
mm,
Or they say, "Oh, everything happens for a reason. Don't
mm,
cry about it." That's toxic positivity. It's not that common, but it does happen. And obviously, don't do it,
mm,
right? And for me, there's a kind of 3 steps that I think about again and again. Deal with the bad, turn to the good. take in the good.
Mm.
The first is deal with the bad, and to deal with the bad inside, or problems inside, problems outside. That's what I mean. We need to turn to the good and take in the good for its own sake, and because that's how to grow the strengths that enable us truly to deal with the bad. So, all that said, I think that there are many people in our culture who take one tiny little edge case issue. Like, yes, there are some people who have psychotic breaks in long meditation retreats, and they make that a reason why everyone should stop doing mindfulness. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The fact that, yeah, there are some annoying people, sometimes assholes, who go into toxic positivity does not mean that we should fail to value the ordinary beneficial experiences of everyday life and the importance of internalizing them. Right. Now, that also is true individually, where with other people, there's a sweet spot of compassion and kindness and assertiveness. It's a sweet spot. I think of it as the strong heart that can see another person clearly, can recognize that there's a being over there while being fiery and outraged at how they are hurting other people. We can do both. We can do both. We can think about this in your own personal life. It's so important, especially if you belong to a group like women, people of color, people of different body types, people of transgender, people low, economic strata. If your inner truth has been attacked systematically while you've been growing up and then in the culture generally, it's very important to claim inside yourself the power to see what you see, value what you value, and plan what you plan inside yourself. It may be dangerous to reveal that to other people outside you who have more power over you, perhaps, but at least inside yourself. In much the same, and we can do that without letting hatred and vengeance invade our heart. In the same way, we can look out in the world. We can see the structural forces that create vast suffering. We can value a change in those forces, and we can plan to take skillful action, including potentially joining a global compassion coalition, without turning others into enemies. We could do both. And we can do that whether it's at the personal level or at the societal level.
Yeah, and so important so that we don't exhaust ourselves in resistance, like you were talking
Yeah,
about.
that's right. That's right.
Okay, Rob, could you put us in gallery now so that we can hear and see people raising hands or the whole group?
Great.
Not if any of you can raise a hand. Here we are. Okay, lovely. So here you have Rick Hanson himself.
Here I have you all.
Just one thing and many other wonderful things. So here he is, and we have about 10 minutes, and a little bit less maybe. So pop up your questions or your comments or anything. Okay, I think we have covered a lot of the questions.
I can ask you a question.
Okay, you can ask us a question or me a question. Okay, great.
You all. And there's no right answer to it, but there's your answer to it. What is one thing that you are trying to grow inside yourself these days? Do you know what it is? Clear in your mind. And if you don't, it's a good thing to find. It gives you direction, it gives you hope. It's a way to heal your history. Right? For me, in my history, I was not traumatized, but I was also a very unhappy, neurotic kid who was very lonely and felt very unloved, inadequate, unwanted. And it felt like I came into adulthood with a hole in my heart. I've written about this. And one thing I did each day is I looked for one or more drops I could put in that bucket. Drop by drop is the water pot filled, as the proverb puts it. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good. That was a thing for me. If someone, for example, has been traumatized or has been pushed around or is being pushed around and is helpless. Yeah, I see your hand there. I'll come back to you, Jenny. Yeah, it's so good to look for little experiences of what could be called agency, that you are a hammer, not a nail, that you do have power in certain areas. Then, whatever that is, what's that one thing? Okay, Jenny.
I just want to confirm you and confirm what you're saying. It's absolutely the secret to life, I think. And I haven't discovered this until I'm 80 years old. And I've been working at it and thought I was doing a good job, but I finally figured it out not too
Hey,
long ago. And what I'm working on is presence, being present with people. I
beautiful.
don't think I can change the world. There's not much time left,
Yeah,
but I can be present and we can enjoy what there is.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
As I said back in the 60s and 70s, right on, right on, sister. Anyway, that's true.
Yeah, and I like also the image of the bucket taking just one spoon of tears
Oh,
out
yeah.
at a time, which
Yeah.
is both of them are totally connected.
Yeah.
The holding to the positive and also somehow reclaiming and revisiting, but also from a different perspective, the past, and maybe understanding, that some of the harm was unintentional, or that what served us a long time ago in some ways now it's not necessary. Whatever processes, for every person is different according to the circumstances. But yeah, here's another hand, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Dr. Hanson. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that I'm a huge fan, and
Thank you.
you're the reason that I took this class, although this class has been an incredible gift. So I'm so grateful to Dr. Barili because this class has been amazing. But I found strength in your work, particularly. It's funny because I was looking at my phone because I have your book Stress Proof the Brain, your brain on my
Oh, yeah.
I purchased it just so I could listen to it, and I read other of your books just that have given me strength through the years, several years. And I just wanted, I feel so lucky to get to look at you, and I'm so grateful for this group. So I just wanted to take a moment to just let you know that you have made a big difference, and thank you.
Lauren, that's so kind. I'm going to take it in. Right? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're having now something else that's called Just 1 Minute, right?
Right. We have all of our products, by the way, online. They're available with scholarship for anyone who needs one. No problem. I think so. We had this video program. I think it's $49 or something, called Just 1 Minute, which takes all of the practices in the book, Just One Thing, and adds 5 or so bonuses to them. And I just talk people through, and each one of them is less than 2 minutes. That's sure. They're not all exactly 1 minute, but they're less than 2. So that would be cool. I have a suggestion also for y'all to think about, my question for you, which is, in addition to what's one thing you're growing these days, inside yourself, what's one blessing, I'll put it that way, you're offering to others each day? One gift, call it a gift. So a kind of a ripple, like what you just said right there, Lauren, is a kind of gift, and it's rippling through me to other people, and in ways known and unknown, seen and unseen, we really do affect others. There's actually good science on emotion contagion, it's called, and think about compassion contagion spreading through networks. So what might be, for me, honestly, I'll tell you straight, one thing I really try to keep in my foreground is the ways in which the societal privilege I carry as a tall, white, older, professional, heterosexual man in America, right, lands hard sometimes on people when I think I'm just sharing my opinion, right? And to try to take that into account. That's a thing I'm trying to be attentive to in terms of my effects on other people. So that might be also something to think about. What's one thing you're trying to take into account or develop or turn more into a habit in your effects on other people? That would be another good takeaway.
Beautiful. Really condense a lot of also finding purpose in our life, and knowing that it's an incredible gift to be born human and having all this potential, and that we affect each other. So how we can, like in Buddhism, you don't do the practice just for yourself. You share the merit. You are gifting some of what you might have learned or what you might have experienced, that somebody else is needing it and suffering, or may their burden be lifted. So that's beautiful too. And in fact, you have given us through Stephanie a subscription to just 1 minute.
Oh, that's very good.
And to the students, we have 2 undergraduate students here, and there are more through Casa Mora with whom we are volunteering. And so it's rippling out. You are very, very generous with your life, with your knowledge, with everything. I think Alan wants to also say something to us, to you.
Hi, Rick. I just, again, it's incredible to have you here. And I've read your stuff, and the positivity is something that I just adore. And I'm realizing that I need to put the time in to build that spiritual core, not only for myself, but for others around me. And that's one of the reasons I'm in this course. It's one of the reasons I'm reading your stuff, and it doesn't happen right away. I can't just wake up one morning and go, oh, I want to be a more spiritual person. Like, it's going to take me 2 or 3 years maybe to build that back, but I'm committed to doing it. But your materials have been very helpful on that path, and your story really resonated with me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's
So
great.
Before
and I hope you check out Neurodharma. You're pretty hardcore, Alan, and that's hardcore stuff. So
okay.
And it's not because I mean, I've tried to be hardcore, but it's more like I'm a pipeline through which that hardcore stuff got organized on the page.
Before you go, what would be a nugget of wisdom that you could give us to assist us on cultivating positive neuroplasticity to the whole class? And as a practitioner, but also someone who has dedicated your life to this, how difficult it is to sometimes keep committing regularly, and that's the secret, right? So any help, remember.
Well, let's see. No, it's great. And then this will be I guess, the last, hopefully helpful thing. First, there's no replacement for time and schedule. So a person could basically say, which I did for a while, when I wake up in the morning, before I get out of bed, I am going to recenter in my purpose in life. And perhaps there's a word or an image or a sentence that summarizes your purpose in life. When you can change your purpose in life, for me, honestly, I don't normally tell people this, but I will, the phrase serving awakening. In myself and in others, serving awakening. It's a process, that's a purpose, whatever it might be for you. And it could just be a feeling. You could do that. You could also, as I did for many, many years, take refuge before you get out of bed in one or more things that for you give you comfort and strength and support. It could be just a sense of the friends you have. It could be refuge in teachers that you have, or refuge in the truth of a certain teaching path. Up to you. You could take refuge in your sense of the mystery, the infinite, the divine. For example, that takes less than a minute typically. You might say some words to yourself. That would be a simple practice. You can commit to that. Or just before bed, to take a minute and recenter in calm, contentment, and caring. Where the 3 needs that we have: peacefulness, contentment, and love. Just center in that. You do that. So you're making a personal commitment. There were many days where I would get out of bed before remembering to do this, and all right, but I would make sure I did it the next day. And there were many days where I would forget to meditate. And then, it's the last minute before I go to sleep, but it's a real minute before my head hits the pillow. These things really help, kind of structure, really the little things, because they actually, they light your pilot light. They ignite the pilot light, which then we need to create everything else. I would really say that. And then the last thing I'll say is a metaphor that's been really helpful to me recently. You're probably already aware of it, Amelia, before me. It's kind of a Buddhist metaphor that basically says practice is like a cart with two wheels following two tracks that go in the same direction. One wheel is on the track of gradual development, gradually healing, gradually filling up your pot, gradually becoming wiser, gradually becoming stronger, more mindful, more loving, more skillful. Fine. The other path, though, is true nature already, the good news already of what's also true. And both are really important. Sometimes people emphasize one more than the other. For a long time, I emphasized gradual development. And I've come to really appreciate the value of being aware simultaneously of the good news that is also true, of our underlying true nature, however you want to talk about it, including in entirely secular scientific terms, our biological home base, our resting state, when we're not disturbed by fear or frustration or conflict with others. So, that has been useful to me. And you might think to yourself, what's the place of both of those? We need both of these. So make sure that you're following, that your own personal cart of practice is following both tracks.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
You're always so amazing.
Yeah, and Amelia's great. You're blessed to be with her and to have her as your what's the word I'm looking for? Pied Piper or something. your cheerleader on the path, leading you on not over a cliff, not over a cliff, but to a better place. Well, y'all take good care. I've got to run, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you.
Best wishes to you and to the benefits flowing through you to other people as well.
Thank you. Thank you.